Well, I just moved to the Midwest 17 years ago. Had no clue where the Midwest was. You know, when you live on the East Coast, we know there's a West Coast. We kind of forget the rest of you in between. So when I moved here, I didn't know what I'd volunteer for, but I thought, as the old cliche goes, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Sure enough, 6 months after moving here, I read about the Avon Breast Cancer Walk. I signed up to walk 60 miles in 2.5 days from Kenosha, Wisconsin to downtown Chicago. Some of you are wondering, why would you do that? Well, I had 3 really good reasons. Number 1, I just moved to the Midwest, had no clue where the Midwest was. Number 2, they anticipated 4,000 walkers. I didn't know anybody in Chicago. I thought I could make a friend, get a date if I was lucky. My 3rd reason, one of my 9 businesses, I owned a health club. I was in the fitness industry, but I'd never walked 60 miles. It was a new physical challenge. I love to challenge myself. And my overriding reason, my best friend, Sherry Lebed Davis, lives in Seattle. She's a breast cancer survivor. I knew I could raise the money in her name and walk in her honor. It had all the components of being the right volunteer activity for me. Here's what I didn't know. My idea of the great outdoors is the distance from the limo to the hotel lobby. I was kind of like Goldie Hawn in Private Benjamin. Remember that movie? They gave her army fatigues, and she said, "Does this come in any other color?" That would have been me. This New York City gal had never really shopped in an Army Navy store, bought things like backpacks, canteens, pup tents. Ooh, just not in my vernacular. But I was up for the challenge. The first day, we walked 17 miles in the rain. Not a good hair day. Got into base camp at night. I was seriously questioning my sanity. Why was I doing this? I took a shower in a truck. I brushed my teeth in a freestanding sink in a parking lot. I slept in a pup tent so little that you had to get dressed with a flashlight. Make sure you're putting your underwear on the right end. Why was I doing this? But the next day, I got my answer. They got us up at 4 a.m., not a time I usually like to get up, but they wanted us to hit the road at 5 when the sun was coming up. They published our route in all the local newspapers in town so everybody knew when this mass of people would be coming through their community. And at 5 a.m., there was my answer. There were people on the front lawns of their homes, sitting in beach chairs with banners that they had made that said, "Thank you for doing this," from my mother, from my sister, from my brother. When I saw those people out there at 5 a.m., I knew why I was doing it. If they didn't have a banner and a beach chair, they were out there with their pajamas, robe and slippers, just to wave at us and say, "Thank you." Cars drove by, they couldn't throw an arm out the window fast enough to yell, "Thank you." Everywhere we walked. And then I came to the little kids who'd set up their mini Alex's lemonade stands and baked chocolate chip cookies and handed us cards. Many of those cards I saved. This one says, "Dear Walker, thank you for walking for all of us. We're so proud of you because you're a lifesaver," with a little lifesaver candy attached to it. Or another one of my favorite cards. This one says, "You're on a roll. Go, girl." It had a Tootsie Roll that I ate. As I collected these cards, I thought, how great are these parents for knowing what they're doing for their children. They're fostering their self-esteem. They're creating a core value. How cool are these parents? We walked 22 miles that day in the hot, blazing sun. I was tired. I was dirty. I had blisters. I had rashes I had never seen before. And I dragged my body into base camp at night. And 600 volunteers had pitched our tents for us and cooked us a hot meal. And I'd witnessed kindness like I'd never experienced before in my life. Because when you volunteer, you feel so darn good about yourself. It's called the giver's high, that you're naturally kind to other people. But the last day was truly the most inspiring. They wanted us to finish together. You can imagine 4,000 walkers. We had young, we had old, we had physically challenged. We had every shape, every size, every ethnicity. We had breast cancer survivors. Everybody walked at their own pace, and they wanted us to finish together. So they created a holding area, and 1 mile away was the closing ceremony area. And when you got to that holding area, you were done. You collapse and take a nap on the grass. You network with another person. You eat your 100th granola bar. And when we were all assembled, they gave out t-shirts at 12 noon. They gave out blue t-shirts to the several thousand walkers making the walk. They gave out white t-shirts to the 600 volunteers. They gave us pink t-shirts to the 200 breast cancer survivors also making the walk. They asked us to line up accordingly. And would we walk that final mile along the Chicago lakefront, holding hands in complete silence in honor of those who'd been lost to this disease. And there wasn't a dry eye on this walk. Could you imagine the deafening silence of 4,000 people walking and the tens of thousands that lined the Chicago lakefront, also in respectful silence? I particularly remember the man who walked in front of me because I stared at the back of his t-shirt for that 1 mile. And on the back of his t-shirt was a photograph of his mother. And underneath it, it said simply, "For her." There wasn't a dry eye on that walk. As we approached the closing ceremony area, we'd been asked to invite our friends and families to meet and greet us. There must have been about 10,000 people at the finish line. The roar that erupted, the cheer that contrasted against that silence will be a moment that will live in my heart and soul forever. And in that moment, I felt like they were cheering just for me, because that's how special you feel when you volunteer. I challenge every one of you to get out there as individuals and volunteer. You owe it for the very life that you enjoy. I challenge you as parents, grandparents, would-be parents, get your children involved early in volunteerism, foster their self-esteem, create that core value.